In this video, I'm going to break down 2 tactics for building up team member independence so that way you and they can get more work done. All of this was inspired, though, by the following listener question.
I've got a bit of a specific question. I've got one person on my team who basically requires me to micromanage her. Every time she's doing anything, whether it's an email, a task, something else, she's pinging me and asking me on Slack or WhatsApp or whatever to review her work. Everything. It's like, hey, is this okay? Are you sure this is all right? I'm doing so much revision and checking over of her work that I can't even get to my own work.
And quick reminder, if you want to see your question featured on episode, info in the description below. But the question here is really one that I think so many of us can relate to. We've all been in this situation, I think, sometime or another, where a team member is just requesting more and more and more oversight. So from a process perspective, what I would try to do in this situation is talk to the person. And as upfront as I possibly can, just ask them why they were asking. This doesn't always work, but a lot of the times it does. If we simply go to that person in our next one-on-one and say something like, hey, Bob, I noticed that you tend to ask me a lot before you send Slack messages, like you want me to check it over. Why is that? Again, say it with a smile, say it casually here, but the goal is just to figure out what is the impetus, what is causing this to be the case, because that will let you know what process needs to be fixed. In the 7 years I've been running ProcessDriven, I've had this happen a few times, and I'll be honest with you, every time I've asked this question, I've gotten a different answer. So I'll go through some of them here in case it might help you. The one time I asked this question, and the response was that, oh, well, when I was in onboarding, the person who was onboarding me always asked me to check with them on every email. So I just kept doing it. And that was a very eye-opening conversation. It made it clear that expectations during onboarding weren't correct, that the manager at the time wasn't really setting up good boundaries. And so we were just seeing the ripple effects of a trained behavior that we enforced on this person. And so the solution there was to recommunicate a new expectation and then go fix onboarding for the future. Another time I asked this question, and it was from nerves. It was lack of confidence. It was, man, I know I could just send it, but I'm just really nervous that if I send this, I'm going to screw it up. With that second situation of confidence, there are a few different tactics we can go to. We can start talking to the person about why do you not feel confident? What knowledge or skill gaps are coming up for you? Then let's try to cover them. Or maybe it's confidence in the fact that they're just afraid of messing up in your judgment, your, criticalness. The second kind of process approach for the confidence piece is to lay out what will happen when things are wrong. Because I think a lot of the times the nerves and the fear come from not knowing what will happen. Like if I mess up an email to a client and boss notices, what are they going to do? Am I going to get fired? There are people for whom that was the normal behavior they were used to. And so they're super risk averse because of that. If you don't want that behavior in your business, we need to set out what would actually happen. So in this case, the conversation might be, hey, Bob, if you mess up an email to a client, you're not going to get fired for that. Instead, Bob, if you mess up an email, what most likely is going to happen is the client's going to email back saying, hey, that didn't help me. And then you're going to realize, oh, shoot, I messed up, and you're going to get to do it again. Is that an ideal situation? No, but it's going to help you learn. Or you might say, hey, well, if it happens, then your manager is going to see it, and then you're going to have a conversation. You just want to paint out the picture of here's exactly what will happen if you mess up, and help them understand that that's not really that bad of a case, and it's a learning moment. It's not a, shoe drops and you're out of here kind of situation, unless it actually is for you. But usually, especially if you got an anxious personality type, like they're picturing much worse than what you would actually ever do. The third solution for this confidence category would be setting up thresholds. So this might be something like a dollar amount. If a customer complains and what they're complaining about is worth less than $200, just use your best judgment. And if it's more than that, say it's $200 to $500, maybe loop a manager in if you're unsure. And if it's over $500, then you could loop me in. You can kind of set these thresholds for involvement that move over time and vary from person to person. I find it really nice to give a threshold of independence, a threshold of leaning on your team, and a threshold of involving boss or manager, just because it gives you these kinds of stair steps. If you find someone is consistently unable or paralyzed with the independence portion, that's a coaching opportunity or maybe a sign that it's not a great fit. But at least you're clearly setting that expectation of here is what I would expect our involvement to be on these kinds of things. But the third category, which I think is a bit more insidious, is I would say the validation category, usually due to lack of knowledge. The third category is people who are asking for feedback because they want validation. They're confident in what they did, but they really need that external person saying, good job, you did a good job today, here's your gold star.
Clever girl.
It's a particular breed of wiring where, yes, you doing something is great, but until someone tells you it's great, it doesn't feel good yet. And so that is why they're asking for feedback. It's not because they actually need feedback. It's because they want the gold star. They want the recognition. They want to seem like they're working. Now, for this final category, I will be honest, when I have faced this, I have not always handled it the best way. Especially at first, I would just indulge. I'd be like, yeah, great job, great job. I would make routines for myself to give constant positive validation to these people and make sure that their egos are being fed and fed and fed. But what I've come to realize is, one, that is exhausting. And two, that's not actually the way to solve this system. That's treating the symptom. But the real systemic problem in that way of wiring is the sense of accomplishment only coming from a good job. Like, you did good, good boy, good girl. But what I've realized is feeding into that validation spiral is just feeding the beast. If I really want to solve the problem, or if I really want to help this person become self-sufficient and self-motivated, I need to connect them to a feedback mechanism. And so in this case, what I wish I would have done when I faced this issue, and I did not, is connecting that person to data, helping them understand how to see that their work is working, and ideally incentivizing them for checking and reporting back on that data. So for example, let's say someone is in charge of resolving support tickets. We could just feed into their validation black hole and tell them, good job, good job, good job. Go into every ticket, congratulate them with warm fuzzies. I'm sure there are people out there who can do that. I know I cannot. So instead, what I would do for that person is to give them a weekly routine or a daily routine of checking their NPS scores or checking their ticket close rates, checking the data associated with their work. I would teach them through coaching or through SOPs, hey, here's what good looks like. Here's how you know if the numbers are good or bad, if they don't already know that. And then have them share that with me or with the team. So now they are validating themselves through data, and then they're bragging about it to the team. They're still getting that social currency of saying, I did good, I did good. But rather than the onus being on the manager or on me, it's on the individual to self-congratulate and then declare it so to the rest of us if they wish to do so. And let me just give one more example. Let's say we have a graphic designer and they're in charge of YouTube thumbnails. I could feed into an ego spiral if there is one. And every time there's a thumbnail and they ask me for feedback, I go in there and say, yeah, great job, woohoo, looks great. Replacing basically my opinion for market data, basically saying my opinion is all that matters. Or I could train that graphic designer to go into YouTube and check the click-through rates for each thumbnail and have that designer be in charge of split testing and reviewing the results from her work. So again, instead of my feedback becoming the data source of good job, you did great, gold star, the actual data that matters is feeding in to the person. And again, they have the opportunity to then share it in team meetings, give them venues to celebrate it in one-on-ones. And I'll be frank, this last example here is probably my hardest learned lesson in this category, and one that I wish someone would have told me earlier, because I, as someone who is not the warmest and fuzziest, shocking, I know, this is not my natural wiring, but I'd read so many business books, especially those talking about women as leaders, about how you need to be softer and fuzzier and squishier and rah, 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 cheerlead. And because of that influence of trying to be what I thought a leader had to be, I fed into the ego hole. I created this self-fulfilling cycle of only if I said great job would it be considered great job, which I didn't want and wasn't in the best interest of that person and was exhausting as hell. When what I really should have done is fix the feedback process so that each person had the data to figure out whether or not they were doing a great job. People who are wired a different way are naturally going to be looking for these data points, and that's how they are already self-motivated. They know how to find that validation already. But for those that don't, this is a connection that we can and should make for our team members rather than trying to fill the gaps and become human duct tape. And as I'm filming this, I'm hoping this isn't just a me challenge. Maybe other people have faced this too. But anyway, I'm going on a whole nostalgic tirade here, thinking back to, oh shit, why did I do that? But the real takeaway for you is, If you are facing the situation, try to get to the root cause. If you can get to it, then you can look at a specific solution. If the person you're talking to, when pressed, really can't tell you why they're asking, probably go the confidence route and start trying some of these solutions. And whichever one works, well, that kind of tells you what the root problem is. Don't be afraid to try a few of these solutions and recognize that all of these are just around building an ecosystem or a process that works for that individual person. It's not saying the person's broken. It's not saying you're broken. It's not saying the business is broken. It's just the way that person is wired or their prior experiences are bringing something a little bit different into the mix, and you just need to make sure you build the right connections. Not the end of the world, not impossible, especially if you follow some of these simple practices. And if you are someone who's getting these requests digitally a lot, one bonus tip for you: don't be afraid to reply to that third or fourth "is this okay" message with a simple response like, why are you asking? Genuinely curious. There's no guarantee you'll get a thoughtful answer, but maybe you will, and it'll at least buy you time until you can have a deeper conversation in your next one-on-one meeting. Thanks for listening to the Operator Hotline. To get your question featured, check the video description. If this was helpful, share this video with a friend or your email list. Don't forget to comment "Hotline" below to vote for more episodes in this series, and until next time, enjoy the process.